DTFF.
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Welcome back to DTFF, folks. Happy Monday. Coming at you on Monday instead of Tuesday this week. But, oh, man, am I friggin' excited for this show tonight. We finally did it. We're capping off our Divisional Breakdown series, saving what I will say is the best division in football, and that is the NFC North. The old black and blue division.
Don't say it like that. Don't say it like that. It's our favorite division. Let's not say the best division. I'm pretty sure we did that with like the NFC South.
So here's the thing, though. We can call it the best division, but not the most competitive division.
Right there. There you go.
We love the NFC North. It's tradition.
Semantics.
It's black and blue. It's old school. It's hard-nosed football, but it's not very good. It's not very good.
Speak for yourselves.
Yeah. All right, let's get into all of this here.
As the resident Bears fan, I suppose you could say that.
Yes. Yes, I can.
Yes. Yeah. So it's going to be a fun show. You can see we've got a couple of guests, which I will introduce shortly. One thing I just want to touch on real briefly, I could spend an entire episode talking about it, but training camps are starting. We are finally through the grind of no football and just with the whispers in the wind of what could be happening. No, it's all here. We all get to see it. Hallelujah. I am so excited. Oh,
love it.
Big time. We did it. We should all be proud of ourselves for this, but not too proud. Not too proud, because let's be honest, some of us have succumbed to the off season quite a bit in the worst ways, myself included. So I'm glad that we're here at this point so I can get out of that funk, but I don't want to pretend that I was above the funk the whole time.
That's right. So joining us this evening to talk all things NFC North, coming back to the show is Jon Helmkamp, sports gambling editor and producer for the New York Post. Welcome back, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, I am lovely. It is great to be back with you guys. This has been an ongoing love affair with me and your podcast, and it's been a long time, but it's good to be back. I'm happy to be here and talk to you guys and lament all things Chicago Bear fandom. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. So tell us here before we get into it, if you are drinking, what you're drinking, and how did you become a fan of your team?
Yeah. I grew up a Seattle fan. And then when I moved away from the Pacific Northwest, because I was in Portland, the love kind of started to wane. And then basically when they took Dwayne Eskridge in the draft, I was laughing and crying and said, I'm done. Like it was the final straw. It was the stupidest pick I've ever seen. It was the coup de grace, if you will, where it just put me out of my misery of being a Seahawks fan and watching John Schneider drive that team into the ground. I actually wrote an article when I was at Deadspin about how John Schneider was ruining the Seahawks, and literally the next day, the Seahawks extended him. So I wrote another article with the headline, Seattle Seahawks troll Deadspin writer Jon Helmkamp with John Schneider Yeah, so at that point I was done. I was living in Chicago when I was working with Deadspin, and just I fell in love with that city and decided to go all in on the Bears, living up here in the region, although I'm behind enemy lines in Grand Rapids. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's cool to kind of dive in on this division with so much history and been good stuff. This, by the way, is Four Roses single barrel. This was behind the counter for just me and a few select people at my wedding, and I'm finishing off that bottle tonight. So good stuff.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Well, there's a nice spin that you can put on all this. See, it doesn't have to be sad whiskey. It can be happy because it's in celebration still. Not of the Bears, but of something else that is much grander and better than that.
Definitely not of the Bears.
This is the only time in recorded history from now until the end of the world that somebody would put a line in the sand at Dwayne Eskridge. I just want that to be known. Nobody else in the world will ever do that.
It was like when you put you scoop just a whole bunch of sand onto one side of the scale, and then just that last grain that is insignificant and means nothing, but it was just enough to tip it. And that's what happened with me when they took Eskridge. I was out.
Fair enough.
That's right. All right. And then representing the Vikings, we've got Evan Brown, writer for the Dynasty Nerds and host of Dynasty Debates. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, same question to you. If you are drinking, what are you drinking? And how did you become a fan of your team, the Vikings?
It is 20 to 2 in the morning here. So I am not drinking because I figured if I started drinking, by the time it reached 20 to 2 in the morning, I would just be laying on the floor, like waving up at the camera and randomly making incoherent noises. So no, I'm not drinking anything exciting tonight. As far as the Vikings, oh man, I have been a fan of the Vikings since Warren Moon was their quarterback. So it's been a couple years. Do you know, growing up, we didn't have a team obviously locally or anything like that. So you sort of just were free to pick your own team, really. And I remember there was multiple things. I really liked their uniforms. I remember really liking their uniforms as a kid. Thought their uniforms were very cool. I liked that sometimes they would play in the snow or something. I thought that was very cool. And I just remember at that age, I remember watching a couple games and just really liking Warren Moon and thought he was awesome as a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And Chris Carter was amazing. You know, I loved Chris Carter as a wide receiver. And then I think my dad at the time sort of liked the Green Bay Packers and Brett Favre. So it was extra nice just to stick it to the old man and root for the opposite team. And then as I got a little bit older, we drafted, Randy Moss. And then that just, there was no turning back at that stage, just seeing Randy Moss in his prime for your team. It was just so exciting. And little did I know for the lifetime of pain and misery I was setting myself up for of, always being good but never being good enough. And not always been good. We've been pretty crappy for a couple of times in recent years, but you know what I mean. It's we're one of those teams that it's we've always been halfway decent or even we've been very good at times but just never good enough. I believe was it Gary Anderson's missed field goal or whatever. Mm-hmm. Still haunts me to this day. We were 17-1 or something like that. Absolutely, that was the year Robert Smith was our running back and Chris Carter and Randy Moss together, and Dante Culpepper was our quarterback, and it just looked like who is going to stop us? Who is going to possibly stop us? And then of course a field goal stops us. And then a couple of years later, even it was wasn't it the Bears that we missed that field goal against in the last couple of seconds of the playoff game again? It was a 30-yard field goal a few years ago. Was it the Bears? It was about 7-8 years ago now.
There was one against the Seahawks pretty recently too.
Yeah,
we were in the playoffs. I remember we got in the playoffs and we got all the way down, and it was oh yeah, it's just a 30-yard field goal. This is so easy. This is done. Next. And then it was oh, and then we get to the Minneapolis Miracle, one of the greatest moments in my sports history life. And it was 2 a.m. here, 3 a.m, and I was stayed up for the whole game, and we were playing the Saints, and I'm I'm just gonna go to bed. This is miserable. This is depressing. And I'm no, I've stayed this long. I'm gonna stay till the end. I'm a fan. And literally I just remember my mouth just hung open. I was I was looking for a flag. I was is this really screaming, freaking out, running around, just excited, and then go and just get absolutely pounded by the Eagles the next week. That's just the life of a Vikings fan.
But you had that high that you got to work with for a week, and that's what really matters. Your fandom was rewarded in the short term.
It's what makes the lows even lower.
Yeah, that's the silver lining I was looking for.
Yeah, and then representing our hometown Packers, it's Jake and myself. We're tag teaming this week. So, Jake, why don't you tell your story of how you became a Packers fan, and then what we're drinking this evening for the show?
Yeah, Jake was born with cheese in his veins. So
you stop that. You stop that. That isn't even a Gouda joke that you just made. Full of them. I'm also full of Sprecher.
Come on, Jake. You can do cheddar.
Oh,
God.
I will remove both
sorry
of you
for what
from
I've
this
done.
podcast. I swear to God. Now stop it.
We'll turn this whole podcast around. We are drinking Sprecker's Pineapple Express. It's a Belgian triple ale. Dustin, I didn't realize how potent this thing was until you pointed it out right before coming on. It's an 8.4% guy, a little bit higher than we typically do. But, you know, I like pineapple things. I like Belgian triples. I don't know about you. I feel like you're a little bit more ambivalent about it than I am. But I like it. I enjoy it. I like it more than my story of how I became a Packers fan because it's the lamest one ever. I didn't watch football growing up. I watched the Super Bowl, and that was it. And I barely followed along with what the Super Bowl even was. I was just waiting for the commercials.
Sounds like most Packers
and Janet
fans.
Jackson. Yeah, and the current Packers fans, so rude. But I moved up to Wisconsin for school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and everybody here obviously loved the Packers. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to just watch and drink with people who are watching and drinking the Packers. And then naturally, it seeps into your skin. Dustin, you know that. It really, the cheese does get you. And it holds you down a little bit. But yeah, I feel lucky that I came in at a time when Aaron Rodgers was just a year before going to the Super Bowl and getting us that nice little title. And then it was pretty much locked in. I mean, you win a Super Bowl a year after being a fan, you just kind of keep up with it, you know? If they could do that again, that would be wonderful. That would renew some faith.
Nah, I'm good.
Lovely story, Jake. So yeah,
Sure.
The beer. I actually don't mind this. I'm not a big Belgian triple or Belgian beer fan in general, but this one's not too bad. A little bit of an alcohol bite to it, but I think that's kind of the triple for the Belgians. You get a little bit of that being higher alcohol. And then my story for being a Packer fan, I just always have been ever since I was a kid. That's the only thing I've known. Born and raised in Wisconsin. I don't have a good story. Sorry. Just one of those things. It's always been there, been a part of my life. I'd feel like a traitor rooting for any other team.
I would call you one if you did. So it's good that you feel that way because it would be reciprocated from myself. So I think we can both agree, though, that we're ready for a new page. Moving on from our quarterback, which we'll talk about later. Now, Dustin, we don't have a drunk trade of the week this week because we just want to get into the meat of this thing. Let's be honest. We don't want to waste any time with the drunk trade of the week. But this is a call for submissions. We could always use a stockpiling of drunk trades. So if you're out there, send one to @DrinkingFantasy on Twitter. DM us. Get it in our hands. And John, maybe you and I make a drunk trade later tonight in our league. And then we'll have one for content.
That.
Yeah, do it for the content, John. Okay.
For the content only. Got it.
All right, so let's get into it. We are going to start with the Lions only because we don't have a Lions representative here, so we can just quickly talk shit about the team being in the bottom of the division and then move on. So notable losses for the year or for this offseason was Cardero Hodge. Notable additions, DJ Chark, and in the draft took Jamison Williams in the first and James Mitchell in the fifth. I guess
so much emphasis on the quote unquote notable for this particular team. Actually, for most teams, I think we're going to get the air quotes there.
Yeah. Don't even make me talk about the Bears editions. There weren't any.
We will.
So we will.
Oh, cool.
We'll get there. Just
exciting.
Hold on. So I will start off by saying that the Lions offense, at least they've got a lot of fantasy weapons. The question is, with Swift and Hawkinson and these wide receivers they have, can Jared Goff actually make them fantasy relevant?
That is a good question.
Evan, why don't you let us know if you think that anybody in this offense can be fantasy, or dare I say multiple people in this offense, be fantasy relevant under Jared Goff?
I do. I actually think I'm actually surprisingly very high on the Lions offense for this year. Just because it is fun to poke fun at them. Obviously, I mean, they've sucked for a long time. It's great. It's a good time, but I really like Dan Campbell. I really, really like Dan Campbell. He has to be one of the top 5 most likable coaches. He's just hilarious. All these sound clips that he comes out with, but I do think that when you look at the failed like Anthony Lynn experiment as the OC, once he got removed from like play calling duties and all that sort of stuff, they really seemed to turn it around that second half of the season. Like they were a lot more exciting, a lot more fast paced. Jared Goff was putting up some good numbers. That was when Amon-Ra St. Brown was absolutely scorching the earth and being like the number 2 overall fantasy wide receiver, something like that for the last like 6 weeks of the year, winning people fantasy championships. I love DeAndre Swift, absolutely huge DeAndre Swift fan. So if he's healthy, I mean, he was on pace for over 100, targets or 100 receptions, whatever, last year. I think, honestly, if he's healthy, I could see him being like a dark horse number 1 overall RB, like genuinely. Ooh. If he was healthy, they've, again, another thing that we don't talk about as much, not as sexy, but it is really important. They have a top 3 or 4 offensive line in the NFL. In fact, I'm just checking here. PFF came out with their rankings. They're 3rd in their projected rankings for offensive line. So that's really massive. DeAndre Swift is a stud. Now they can't, even load the box and just wait on him because they've got TJ Hawkinson. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got Jameson Williams when he comes back. TJ Hawkins slouched himself. Yeah, Jared Goff's not the greatest quarterback, but we've seen him be fantasy relevant, under McVay even. He was a top 12 quarterback a couple of years. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As much as it's fun for them to be the punching bag and, the butt of jokes and everything. And don't get me wrong, I love it. But I do think, I think they'll be fantasy relevant. I think, like I said, honestly, genuinely think that if Swift is healthy the whole year, he could be, I'm not saying he will be, but he'd be a dark horse pick for me to be the number 1 overall RB, just with the amount of receptions he gets, with the explosiveness. He's a very fantastic, actually skilled running back. And if he gets more goal line opportunities because their offense is moving the ball more, things like that. I do think with Amon-Ra St. Brown, even, I think that, we loved what we saw those last couple of weeks. And then I think we spent all off season just convincing ourselves that he sucks. And it was just all a figment of our imaginations and stuff like we do in the off season.
Did no such thing.
Well, I mean, you're
the only one
drowning your sorrows in whiskey. So you didn't, but everyone else seems to have convinced themselves that, he's terrible and all this kind of stuff. I don't think he is. I think he'll be good. I don't think he's going to be like a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. But I think he's going to be very usable. I think Dan Campbell absolutely loves the guy. I think like if Dan Campbell could create, his own personal wide receiver of all, like a Frankenstein of wide receivers, it would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he loves the dude. So he's got that, kneecap biting, yeah, exactly. Like Dave says, let's effing go. He is going to be good. I do think he will be good, especially with Jameson Williams coming back, potentially midway through the season this year, things like that. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown for your redraft is going to be a real value because people have just been fading him a lot and things like that. So I think he's good. I think Swift will be awesome as long as he's healthy. And I think Hawkinson will be good as well, especially, people have kind of gone off him a little bit, but actually, again, he got injured, that first half of the year with Anthony Lynn being the offensive coordinator. It just wasn't a good thing. There wasn't good vibes. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot of, fantasy goodness to go around. I think you could even see Jared Goff potentially being fantasy relevant. I don't think he's going to be a top 12 quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be as bad. Again, if you look at the second half of the year, especially that last 5 or 6 weeks, he's putting up some decent numbers. So in a super flex sort of situation, you might be able to just grab him as like a late quarterback 2, quarterback 3.
Yeah. I mean, look, I hate to admit it, but part of me really wants Jared Goff to dominate this year just because everybody's being such buttholes about him, I think, and refusing to believe that he can ever be good again for fantasy. So I love that. John, do you have the same sort of thoughts about multiple pieces potentially being relevant?
I mean, I really do, and it's a really weird place to feel envious of the Lions because as a Bears fan, I'm envious of the Lions. Outside of the quarterback position and Darnell Mooney, like I effing love Amon-Ra St. Brown. You guys that like watched me pre-draft process last year knew that I was like, Amon-Ra can be really good. I like him a lot as a possession guy. And sure enough, he came on just scorching hot in the second half of the season last year. I think that he's awesome. I think that it depends on the volume that he gets because he's not your X receiver that's going to line up on the outside and dominate. But in PPR, what he can do out of the slot, I mean, he has all the tools to be a dominant possession slot wide receiver. And Thank you. I think that he's going to continue to do that. I think that he can flirt with top 12 value in PPR this year just because of the sheer volume that he's going to get. I don't know if that's a realistic outcome, but I think that that's within the range of outcomes for sure. I think that he's a locked and loaded wide receiver too in PPR. Deandre Swift is a boss. What he can do as a pass catching back is incredible also in PPR. I'm totally with Evan. He's a dark horse overall RB1 candidate for sure. I think that he has that within him. I think that he's locked in as being a top 6 running back in PPR just because of the pass catching volume that he possesses, and their offensive line is incredibly strong. Like, they are so well set up to go get their quarterback of the future in the 2023 draft and then potentially really make things interesting in Detroit. Like, I hate to admit it as a Bears fan, but they have gone about this so well. Build the trenches, get young talent on the roster, beef up on defense. They got Aiden Hutchinson, 2nd overall this year. Like, they have such good pieces in place to really start rounding the corner as the rest of the division seemingly looks like it's collapsing, other than the Vikings. But like Green Bay, you guys have to admit, you guys lose Devontae Adams. That's really scary. You've got Aaron Jones and then an aging Aaron Rodgers. You're trying to squeak in as much as you can while he's still at quarterback. But the Lions could actually end up being good for the first time in a really long time in a couple years. I don't think they're going to get there this year, but I think they're going to do better than a lot of people think they're going to. I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm very curious as to what their win total prop is on like DraftKings or FanDuel or something like that, because I might take the over on it. I think they've got some really interesting pieces. So yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm really curious to see what Jameson Williams is going to do in the second half of the season. I'm not really that in, like, he's not worth it to me in redraft because of the injury status to potentially start the year when he's, probably going to land on PUP. So I don't think that I'm drafting him in redraft, but he's definitely a name that I'm going to be keeping an eye on and potentially see if I can scoop him on waivers for the non, leagues where we're playing with dynasty analysts on Twitter. Like your run of the mill everyday redraft league, a lot of people are going to be sleeping on Jameson Williams. And then in the second half of the year, it could be like, oh my God, look what that guy did. And he could have a few blow up games. So yeah, it's a weird time when I'm envious of the Lions, but I think that they've got a lot of really good stuff going right now.
That's weird.
And just
first of all, no, go ahead, Evan.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say just about Swift, because I forgot that our good buddy Felix wasn't on the show tonight, so I didn't really do any prep. I just was talking off the top of my head, but I looked it up there. Swift in only 12 games had the 4th most targets of any running back last year. So, he had like 73 targets, I believe, and only 12 games played. He was on pace for like well over 100 targets. He was getting like 6 targets a game. Targets are so valuable, especially in any sort of PPR setting, which I think hopefully most of us are civilized enough to be playing in PPR leagues. I just think sky is the absolute. I mean, you'd have to be a Bears fan to be playing in a standard league. Just love pain and misery and David Montgomery. But yeah, I think that absolutely, if he stays healthy, I think Swift is my vote for like the number 1 RB this year, just with that offense taking a step forward.
Wow,
God,
Dustin,
imagine being a Vikings fan and just being a Saints of the NFC North, always coming up close but not able to finish it off.
I love this.
Oh, we love beating the Saints, actually, to be fair.
That's true. That's true. And you can do that again this year. I firmly believe that.
We will do that
I feel like I'm crazy. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I am lower than everybody so far, I think, on everybody on the Lions, except for Jared Goff, weirdly. I'm bullish on him just out of spite. Are you?
Yeah, it's so funny that you're bullish on the quarterback and lower on all the skill players, where the consensus typically is, God, if Goff can just keep it together, these skill players are going to be great for fantasy. That's a very interesting juxtaposition.
Mine is they're all going to merge together into this puddle of kind of mediocrity themselves, but because there's so many of them in that puddle, rising puddles raise all quarterbacks or something like that. So I think that's
the same.
I'm pretty sure
really close to the same. Yeah.
How many of these pineapple beers have you had again?
It'll be a few more before we're done here. Dustin, are you on the same track with them before we move on?
I want to be. I love, only because here's the deal. I realized in this offseason that one of my dynasty teams, I basically invested in the entire Lions offense except for Goff. I have Swift, I have Hawkinson, I've got Jamison Williams, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I hope you two are correct.
That on one dynasty team?
Yes.
His dynasty team is called the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long have you been playing dynasty for? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's an optimal strategy, but
I made some bad drunkish trades. Just, let me be.
We need to get those on this podcast for the next episode, by the way. You need to dig through the vaults. Do we want to? Well, here's an easy way to make your misery seem a little bit less if we moved on to the Bears. You want to do it?
The Bears. Shout out Dave. Proper hoser, eh?
All right, so the Bears, they lost this offseason. Allen Robinson, Jakeem Grant, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, and Damian Williams. They brought into the team this just monster list of players. Darrington Evans, Byron Pringle, Tajay Sharpe, Dante Pettis, Equinemius St. Brown, Ryan Griffin, James O'Shaughnessy. And in the draft, brought in Velus Jones in the third and Treston Ebner in the sixth. So
I didn't even know he was a running back, but he's a dog.
Remember that one time that we could have taken George Pickens with both of our second round picks, and then we didn't.
Yeah, that was a good time.
It was really fun to watch from the outside looking in for once. Somebody do something dumb with wide receivers. So yeah,
that's your brand, not mine.
Yeah. True story. So, John, how are you feeling about your Bears? Some of the moves they made and all that stuff.
With the offseason departures, what I can tell you for sure is that Justin Fields enters year 2 as the starting quarterback. So we've got that going for us.
Hot take.
Hot take. There's this tweet that I just found from our friend Dave Klug from March 1st. Wide receivers I'd love to see in Chicago in 2022. Ready? Chris Godwin, Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, unlikely, in brackets. Michael Gallup, Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Shark. Please get Justin Fields at wide receiver 1. I just responded to him and said, laughs in bear down. Because that didn't happen. We have Darnell Mooney, who I love. I love Darnell Mooney. I'm excited to see what Darnell Mooney can do. I honestly think that if this offense had more of a ceiling to it, that Darnell Mooney could be like a Deontay Johnson type, but there's just not enough talent on this offense for him to kind of reach that ceiling. And outside of him being a wide receiver 2, probably. Isn't it funny how we can go through a list of wide receivers and be like, yeah, that guy's like a locked and loaded wide receiver 2. It's like, John, you have 48 wide receivers listed as wide receiver.
At some point, Matt has to step in and say you're full of it.
There can only be 12 of them, John. So maybe he's a wide receiver 2. Maybe he's a flex play. David Montgomery is an RB2. And that's it. I don't know what else. Like, there's really nothing else to talk about. There's no one else that's going to be fantasy relevant this year. It's not going to happen. Justin Fields, whom I love very, very, very much. I think that he can still sneak into QB1 territory with his rushing upside, because what we saw from him last year in a horrible offense that was not creative and not tailored to getting him on the run and bootlegging and stuff like that, which is his biggest strength. And every time that they would drop back and put him into a 4-step drop and run 3 curls, I wanted to scream. I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Get this guy on the move. He's a Ferrari in open space. Like, let him move around and put the defenses in tough positions. And they just didn't do it. So I expect to see more of that this year. Last year, he had 423 rushing yards. Kyler Murray had 420. Murray started 14 games and Fields started 10. So the rushing upside for Fields is a top-tier rushing quarterback kind of guy, a Jalen Hurts kind of rushing quarterback. I genuinely think that Fields has that in him. The biggest issue is that why are the defenses going to be scared by the wide receiver core and put 4 guys back in zone? Why would you do that when all you have is Darnell Mooney and then a 28-year-old super senior Velus Jones Jr., who's your wide receiver 2. Like, there's nothing on this roster that is going to scare opposing defenses.
You are so short-sighted. Maybe I missed this in all of your negativity, but did you not talk about the part where Cole Commet is going to be a top 3 tight end in the league?
Okay. All right. Cole Commet I like. Cole Commet is awesome. The lack of touchdown productivity is, bound for regression, as fantasy Twitter likes to say. Matthew Betts, my buddy, tweeted about it a couple days ago. Like, oh, look, you have Dawson Knox with his 1,000 touchdowns and, Cole Commet with 0. These are both going to regress in opposite ways. It's like they could, but the Bears offense could also just be a total shit show, and Cole Commet doesn't have red zone opportunities to score touchdowns. So I'm bracing for us having a very, very high draft pick next year, but Fields showing enough where they're not going to move on from. Now, the one thing that I do like about the turnover in the front office and with the head coach is that very early on, they committed to Fields and they came in and they said, we like what we have here in Justin Fields. He's our quarterback. So they're not saying we need to tear down that position. I think they are taking a longer approach with him, knowing that this roster is such crap and that they have so much work to do to get the talent around him, that as long as he just shows some sort of poise and maturity this year, I think he's going to be fine going into 2023. I think that's all you're really asking for him. Yeah, this is very uncomfortable. Thank you. I think that's all you're asking for Fields this year is show some understanding of the playbook, show leadership qualities, show poise, don't make stupid throws, and try to survive behind a Swiss cheese offensive line.
It's almost like you're asking him to be mediocre for the safety of his future in a way. Like, and would that maybe cut back on his rushing potential though? Yeah,
it could. But what I don't want to see is I don't want to see him do Carson Wentz on the bad Eagles offensive line where he's like, I have to do everything myself, and then make stupid decisions and hold the ball too long and try to play hero ball. I don't want Fields to do that this year because it can put him backwards so fast for his development as a quarterback. I want him to make good decisions, trust your mobility. I want designed mobility for Fields. I want them to get him into space and allow him to use his mobility in a smart manner. But with this offensive line and with literally just Darnell Mooney at wide receiver, I am legitimately terrified that Fields is not going to make it through the year. Like, I'm so scared that he is going to get banged up and hurt. And I can't even tell you who our quarterback 2 on the depth chart is right now. I don't even know. Who is it? Oh, it's Trevor fucking Siemian. That's who's number 2 on our depth chart. We're going to see him at some point this year. Fields is going to end up getting hobbled and Trevor Siemian is going to be in at quarterback. It's going to be
sleeper alert. Deep sleeper alert. Trevor Siemian, add him into your dynasty squads there. But don't add Tajay Sharpe, according to John.
No, if you need
Tajay
quarterback,
Sharpe's not going to do anything.
If you need quarterback 36 when there's only 32 of them, Trevor Siemian's your guy. Yeah, I'm very nervous as a Bears fan this year. It's not going to be good. I wish that I could come in with some optimism, but I literally can't even spin what this team did in the offseason into having any glimmer of hope. It's just like, okay, make it through the year. Hopefully next offseason with a high draft pick and with free agency and continuing to shed, bad contracts that they have on the roster, that they'll be in a position to start turning the corner and addressing some of these needs. Give me Jackson Smith and Jigba high in the first round next year draft, please. That's what I'm looking forward to.
So pour one out for Chicago for this year.
That was depressing.
Cheers. Yes.
Jeez. I feel like if you choose the Bears, you have to at least be positive and optimistic about them. I mean, it feels like you're like this bitter ex who's just like pointing out all their flaws and like, yeah, well, I never liked them anyway. And actually, they snore and it's not even me that spent all the money. They're the ones always drinking on Friday night. I just was coming home from a hard day's work and what happened? No offensive line, no wide receivers. The cupboard is bare. Here I am. Used to be a Seahawks fan. Now I'm a Bears fan. Can't get no respect. Freaking Justin Fields a dog.
You sound like
I want you two to have your own podcast so desperately. Not this one. This one is still ours, but I want the two of you to have your own.
Justin Fields is a dog. Like, he was freaking 12 games played, 4th most rushing yards of all quarterbacks last year.
Yeah.
Absolute dog.
Fields is amazing. And that's it. And
Mooney
here's
is
the other
amazing.
thing about
Mooney is a
let's talk-
dog.
Mooney is amazing. I love Mooney. Can you stop with the dog thing? It's really weird.
No way.
Let's talk about the running back position.
That was a very
really quick, because
undog-like thing to say.
It was very undog-like. I do want to get into this real quick. David Montgomery, I think, is a good running back when things are blocked up for him. With this offensive line, I'm very concerned that that's not going to be there. This is also the last year of his rookie contract, and this team is in a rebuild. I don't think that he's going to get a contract from them. They also have Khalil Herbert, who looked fantastic when he came in relief last season. Citing some numbers here from FFB Victoria, our friend. When Herbert was in replacing David Montgomery in week 6 and 7 last season, he had 37 carries for 197 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 receptions for 15 yards. They'd never targeted their running backs last year. I think that they might in Luke Getsky's offense. I think the running backs could be a little bit more involved in the passing game, and with literally no wide receivers outside of Darnell Mooney, they're going to have to. But Khalil Herbert had 5.3 yards per carry in that span, averaged 18.8 PPR points per game. He was the RB8 overall over that 2-week span. I think that this coaching staff and front office is going to want to see what Herbert can do so that they know what the future of the backfield might look like, if they can lean on him in more, capacity going forward, if they do feel like he's going to be someone that they can count on and work into their future plans. I think that he's going to get a little bit more run this year because of that, and also because we've seen Luke Getsy in Green Bay deploying multiple running backs frequently. We had Jamal Williams up there with Aaron Jones, and then he left town, and it was A.J. Dillon, who's now the new fantasy football hotness as the sleeper running back who has RB1 upside, apparently, and I think that's dumb unless Aaron Jones gets hurt. But Khalil Herbert, I think, is going to be valuable. He's someone that I look at kind of like a Tony Pollard like level in terms of value. This is your second running back on the depth chart, but he could have his own standalone value depending on how this offense deploys him. And if something happens to David Montgomery, then I think Khalil Herbert has a lot of upside to potentially even provide more fantasy value than what David Montgomery can do. So that is an interesting point within this offense that I think is worth kind of paying attention to. I think Herbert is absolutely worth a late round, flyer in your redrafts. That's going to be an interesting thing to monitor to see if Montgomery is going to be a part of Chicago's plans after this year.
Fair enough. I like Felix Jones, by the way, for what it's worth. I just wanted to put that out there so it was on record somewhere. And that way, if he does really well, I can clip this part of it out and no other part of the podcast and tell everybody how smart I am.
Exactly.
Dustin,
That's the way to Twitter. That's the way to Twitter.
Do we want to move on from this depressing team? It might be the most depressing team in the NFL.
Yes.
So
thanks for having me on, by the way. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here. Really glad to be here, Jay.
We'll bring you back next year to see if things got any better at all.
Bring me on.
And we'll just compare and contrast for it.
You need to bring me on in the pre-draft prep so that I can be like, for the love of God, Bears, please draft a wide receiver. And then when they don't, bring me back on so that I can be like tearing my hair out and just going ape shit over the Bears front office.
I thought we were only going to do it pre-draft so that it could just be all hope, and that's the last we would have of it. It would end on a hopeful note.
You're a little too positive for me. I think that someone needs to like pee in your cereal or something and just kind of knock you down a couple pegs of positivity. You're just such a ray of sunshine. And I'm just
put that on your list of things to do.
Pea and Jake cereal. Got it.
Yep. Put it on. Add it to the list.
I'm going to sneak over tomorrow morning and you won't even know.
Well, before my Cheerios get peed in, let's talk about these Vikings.
Yes.
All right. So the Vikes, they lost Tyler Conklin and Chad Beebe this offseason. Brought in Albert Wilson and in the draft, Ty Chandler in the 5th, Jalen Naylor in the 6th.
I hardly knew her.
And Nick Muse
in
the 7th. So, Evan, how are you feeling about your Vikes?
Feeling good. I'm actually feeling better because of the front office changes that have taken place since last year. So I'm super happy that Zimmer's gone. I feel like he just needed to go. It was time. It was probably time a couple years ago. I might have been John on this podcast lamenting how much I hate my team and everything is terrible if Zimmer had not gone. So I'm glad he's gone. I wasn't as I'm happy Spielman's gone. I wasn't as upset about him being there or whatever, but no, I mean, I'm really happy with the direction we've gone with the coaching staff. Kevin O'Connell coming over from the Rams. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, first year head coach and stuff like that. But yeah, it's positive. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a more pass heavy offense, which you love to see. For fantasy and just for the weapons that we have. I feel like we've underperformed for years now based on how good the quality, when it was Diggs and Thielen, and now that it's Jefferson and Thielen and Osborne, emerging as a wide receiver 3. Kirk Cousins, I've never been a big Kirk Cousins guy. I don't like him as a quarterback, but I respect what he's done and what he's able to do. And I think that in this offense, he should be even better than he has been. So yeah, I mean, I think it's wheels up, as far as like being excited and everything like that. I mean, I don't think we're going to win a Super Bowl. We're the Minnesota Vikings, but I think that we should be good this year. We should be exciting, fun, and there should be fantasy goodness.
Let me give you something that I'm very intrigued by for the sports betting crowd, because this is, what I do on a daily basis now with the New York Post. The Vikings are plus 260 to win the NFC North, which I think is very intriguing odds with you Packers losing Devontae Adams and with the weapons that they have there and the new change in the offense. I definitely sprinkled a little on that one because I think that they've got a really good chance of winning the division.
Yes, throw a little quiche on that.
Some quiche.
Love it. No, I'm excited, man. Like, you look at, like, for example, last year, even just like things like DVOA and stuff, the Rams were 8th in DVOA, Minnesota was 16th, I mean, and you look at the roster, it shouldn't have been that big a disparity. I mean, Dalvin Cook's a fantastic running back. Thielen, when he's healthy, amazing wide receiver. Justin Jefferson, my opinion, best receiver in the NFL. Osborne's emerged as a really good wide receiver 3. And now we've got a healthy Irv coming back. The offensive line has gotten better. That was one of the biggest concerns for us last year. Offensive line was crap. I think we actually improved a little bit at the end of the year, and we still came in at like 23rd on PFF's final sort of like run through of the offensive line. So kind of bottom 3rd. So we've improved a little bit. I think their projections have us about 19th. So again, not great, but sort of, I feel like with offensive lines, all you need to be is like middle of the pack. It's great to have. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I could have a top 3 offensive line, I would take it all day. But
like Detroit.
Yes, exactly. Detroit, the Eagles, somebody like that would be great. Love that. But as long as you have like a solid enough that you're not a liability, I think that's a win. When you have enough good pieces, so you've got a decent quarterback, you've got some good wide receivers, you've got a good run game, I think you can get by with just an okay offensive line. I think our offensive line should be okay, should be middle of the pack this year. What I'm really excited about is honestly having a head coach that's not stuck in like the 80s, that isn't just like, run the dang ball. You know what I mean? Like, it's 3rd and 8. What are we going to do? Run the ball. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like they'll never see it coming. But then we just run the ball on 1st down and 2nd down, run it again. I feel like
God, it's like the Giants play call.
He was like the bad version
Giants,
of
they were like at like their own 9-yard line, like backed up at their 9 or something like that on 3rd and long, and they ran it last year.
Yeah, he was like the bad version. He was like the depressing version of like Herman Boone, where he's like, I only have 2 plays, split game like Novocaine, run it. It always works. Whatever he says. It was terrible. It was depressing. It was awful. And he hated Kirk Cousins. Like, they were literally, wasn't it like they were like in like fisticuffs on the sidelines a couple times last year? Pretty much, it was awful. But yeah, the Rams
Cousins. So it was more like that, the Snap movie where the 2 gangs are going at it, but they just dance at each other. It wasn't really full blown.
West Side Story.
Yeah,
that's the one.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like, it was like something good happened? Like, didn't they win or something? And then Kirk Cousins like freaked out and grabbed Zimmer and was like shaking him like he was excited. And Zimmer's like, get off me. And then they were like, it was this awkward, like kind of, okay, cool. But
Zimmer was probably just worried that he was going to get another detached retina, with all that shaking. So
that's fair.
I mean,
that is fair.
That's accurate.
But yeah, no, I'm excited.
I'm curious here. It just, I'm always trying to find some overlap betwixt teams, and I'm very curious for the both of you. We're talking about, you mentioned Adam Thielen and how he is amazing when healthy. Absolutely. Last year, before he was injured, he was on pace to be, or he was throughout that time, a fringe wide receiver one, if not an outright wide receiver one at that time. So now we're talking about Darnell Mooney being the guy on the Bears. They're very, very close in ADP in full PPR format. So I'm curious for both of you, would you rather have Thielen or Mooney this year? Evan, let's start with you.
I'd probably go Mooney. Just because he is the one, he's probably going to get 150 targets, and he is great. Like, he's improved every year. I love Mooney. He's like one of my favorite players. And yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of the underlying advanced statistics, and he was actually like top 12 or top 18 in a lot of, things. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I did a big piece on him earlier in the offseason, but things like target share and yards per route run, all that kind of stuff. He's very good.
Dog.
He's underrated route runner. He is a dog, absolutely. And so I think I would probably go Mooney, because with Thielen, you've always got that worry about the health. Like, oh, is he going to get beat up? Is he going to? And KJ Osborne's no joke. Like, I really like KJ Osborne this year, especially. The Rams, again, something that the Rams do a lot of is run 3 wide receiver sets. They ran 87% of 3 wide receiver sets versus only 60% for the Vikings last year. I think there's going to be a lot more 3 wide receiver sets. There's already been one of the big things that always buoyed Thielen's value was his touchdowns. He had so many touchdowns over the last couple of years. It was insane. And whilst I'm not going to take that away from him, I'm not going to be like, oh, touchdowns are bad, because actually, contrary to popular belief, touchdowns are a good thing.
Yes.
But I know, groundbreaking.
Shocking.
But the thing is, I think that, you already saw Osborne came out of nowhere. He had no targets as a rookie. Last year, he had 80 targets and he got 7 touchdowns. So he's really getting this chemistry with Kirk Cousins as well. So I just feel like there's certainly, I mean, to your point, before he got injured in week 12 last year, Adam Thielen was wide receiver 7, I believe, in PPR. So he was a top 7 or 9, somewhere like that. But he was a top 12 wide receiver before he got injured.
He was good.
Yeah. It was hashtag
Yes.
good. And so I think, to your point, he stays healthy. They have a high-powered offense. He's very good. But there's a lot of ways in which, he could go wrong. He could get injured. He's a bit older. Or it could just become, Jefferson and Osborne a lot, and then maybe he's the third. Maybe this is the year he gets bypassed a little bit. We don't know. So I'd probably lean Mooney personally. What about you, John?
I'd lean Mooney as well, just for the same reason that you said. He's the guy in his offense. And he should have such an insane target share. I think it's interesting what you brought up about the touchdowns for Thielen, how touchdowns are actually a good thing. That I think is going to be that's kind of the balancing between the two, right? Like, you have Mooney, who's going to demand such a high target share, but we don't know how many touchdowns he's kind of got in him in that offense, whereas Adam Thielen is almost assuredly going to have less yards. That the screen blanked on me. Can you guys hear me?
You're good.
Yep.
Okay.
We're back.
Okay. And we're back. Thielen is almost assuredly going to have less targets, receptions, and yards than Mooney, but he's capable of putting up 12 or 14 touchdowns, and Mooney might have 4 on the whole year. So it's kind of a bit of a balance, there. I think that I would probably still go Mooney, especially in PPR leagues, but it's close. I think it's deserving for their ADP to be close, because I think that there's good arguments for the different methods in which they are most likely going to go about getting their fantasy points. I think it's interesting. I'm looking at it right now. The Vikings actually were tied for the 11th most pass attempts per game last year. So everyone's talking about how they're expecting their offense to take this big step forward in terms of the passing volume and stuff like that. I'm not really sure kind of how much more ceiling there is. They threw at 35.5 attempts per game last year. Let's compare them to the Rams, 35.7. They're just in front of them on the list. So ironically, although it felt like they were a real ground and pound kind of team, I'm not really sure that they were when you look at the numbers. So I'm not kind of sure how much more there is in the tank for this to be there's going to be so much more passing volume and there's all these targets to go around to everybody. I think their offense is probably going to look fairly similar. Now, the like theory behind it in terms of when they pass might be different. You know what I mean? Like it might be shifted in terms of game script and like, okay, what do they do on first down, or what do they do on, 3rd and 3? Like, okay, sure, you might see more passing in those situations, but there might only be a few more pass attempts per game for the Vikings compared to what we saw last year. So
well,
that could be interesting.
Talking about that then, so if we're going to assume that maybe the passing volume it's tempered a bit from what the expectation is. Maybe the increase isn't quite as fervent, but they do adopt more 3 wide receiver sets. Does this mean that is Irv nothing? Is the Irv hype gone? Dustin, let me put it to you, because right now Irv Smith and Cole Commet are back-to-back in ADP. Who would you rather have, Dustin?
1,000 miles.
No,
Cole
you
Commet.
stop negative Nancy down there with the Bears. You don't get
No.
Cole. If you're going to be negative about everybody, you don't get Cole Commet. Dustin, would you also have Cole above Irv?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
100 times out of 100. I mean, I am just off Irv Smith. Just we've heard the hype for years now, and it's been one issue after another, whether it's other competition that he hasn't been able to beat out, or it's been injury or what have you. Until he proves it and I see a little something, I'm just going to be out on him.
And real quick, before we move on to our beloved Packers here, Dustin, I feel like we deserve it. We deserve just a little bit here to talk about it. I don't care what you guys think.
I don't like it.
Let's do it around the horn.
I might literally just stand up and go pour more whiskey when you guys
Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook, and draft him where you want to draft him. I don't care if you think he's a top 5 versus a top 8 running back. That doesn't interest me at all. What interests me is, would you draft Alexander Mattison as a handcuff? John, start with you. Yes or no, Alexander Mattison as a handcuff in your redrafts?
Yeah, I absolutely would. When he's been in a featured back position, because Dalvin Cook tends to miss about 3 games per year, it seems like. When he's been filling in those games, he's been an RB1. Like, no question about it. I don't have the numbers in front of me on this, but I remember writing an article last year for Pro Football Network about it on like a week preview, and it was one of the weeks where Dalvin was hurt, and I was like, oh yeah, Alexander Mattison is like a top 5 running back this week against Detroit, and he balled out because it's just what he does when he gets a featured role. So the whole
you're throwing your shoulder out, patting yourself on the back with this answer, by the way, John. I just want to caution you as your specialist not to get that rotation too far back. That's all.
Yep. Let's make sure we're stretching out the rotator cuff.
No,
there.
that is truly wonderful, and I agree with that part of it. Evan, do you agree with the concept of just drafting, I guess, him as a handcuff? If you're going to take any handcuff in your redraft, would it be Madison?
If I drafted Dalvin Cook, I would take Madison. I wouldn't reach on Madison. Like, if he's like, I imagine that most people in your league are probably like not as excited to draft him if they don't have Dalvin, so he might just fall to you nicely in the ADP or in a later round even. So I'd be happy enough to take him. I certainly wouldn't reach on him because I feel like that negatively impacts your upside of your overall roster. But I do think that him, Pollard, there's a couple of handcuffs where you're like, well, if the main guy goes down, I know this dude's going to get like 90% of the work. You know, it's not going to be a running back by committee. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate it.
I like targeting other teams back or other players' backup running backs instead of my own handcuff, because if Zeke gets hurt and I have Dalvin Cook and I also have Tony Pollard on my team, then like that's the upside that I want for my roster. I don't necessarily just want the handcuff to my own guy, but I like looking at those high upside backup running backs to target all over the place. Like, whether or not I have David Montgomery, like I want Khalil Herbert in the late rounds this year. I want Alexander Mattison, Tony Pollard. Like, I want those guys, because if I have my RB1 and RB2, and then I also get a couple weeks with one of those backups in the fold, then that's a really high upside fantasy roster on a weekly construction basis.
It's definitely
one more
tricky.
question for,
I was just going to say it's definitely tricky when it's redraft versus dynasty because redraft has such smaller benches. So it certainly limits your upside if you're taking your own handcuff, especially if you're trying to do it. Like if you went Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones and then you're trying to grab A.J. Dillon and, Madison, and you're like, your whole roster is like 2 backfields basically. Especially if you go Miami Dolphins, then you've got like 6 running backs for the one spot and it's just a nightmare. So
you can't even fill your lineup.
Yeah,
at that point.
You're like, hey, I hope can we add some more flexes because I got about 6 running backs here. And
it's like, do they still have Jacoby Brissett? Is he the goal line running back? What's the current situation in Miami?
It's everybody for themselves, I think, at this point.
Yes.
Dustin, before you take us into the Packers, would you rather have straight up Herbert or Madison as your handcuff in redraft? Khalil Herbert versus Alexander Madison.
Madison, only because we've seen him do it. I mean, time and time again. And, as was said already, we know he's going to get the workload if when Dalvin Cook gets dinged up and misses a couple games.
Fair. All right, let's bring it on home. Let's do this.
And thank you very much for joining us for this.
Good to see you.
Don't you dare.
That's fine. We don't need him anyway. I didn't want him around for this part of the show.
He's just going to bring us down with his negativity.
That's right. So the Packers, our lovely Packers, they lost Devontae Adams, MVS, and Equinemius St. Brown. We brought in the replacement of all replacements in Sammy Watkins. And in the draft, we took Christian Watson in the 2nd, Romeo Doubs in the 4th, and Samori Toure in the 6th. So, Jake, start us off here. What are your feelings about the Packers offseason moves and the state of the state?
We replaced everything that we needed to replace. Obviously, I mean, we lost 3 wide receivers. We added 3 wide receivers and Sammy Watkins for a game. So I feel like we're basically set to go there.
Hey, week 1, Sammy Watkins is going to smash.
Yep. It's going to be in every one of my GFS lineups.
I think he's going to throw everybody for a loop. I think it's going to be a terrible week 1. And it's going to be an amazing week 2 just to fuck with the haters. So, can't put him into a corner. But I really do think that, as much as we talk, obviously it's a negative. Losing who we lost, it's a negative. It'd be stupid to say anything other than that. And it decreases Aaron Rodgers' value 1,000%. I don't want any of the wide receivers on this team for fantasy. I don't want a single one. I want to hammer this backfield. I want both of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon at their cost. And I want Robert Tonyan at his cost, who is being slept on a little bit for his tight end space. Now, with all that said, I do think it's good for Aaron Rodgers to have to spread the ball around for real-life NFL purposes. The dude spent the entirety of his playoffs the last 3 years over targeting one man in Devontae Adams, and it ruined us from that perspective. So part of me is actually, dare I say, excited for what could happen with these wide receivers and just to see him have to stretch. I want to see him stretch, and it could go down in flames. And this, I know. No,
this was getting a little personal for a minute.
Dustin,
only if he does it in the offseason shorts.
I need you to cliff. I want to see Aaron Rodgers stretch. I need that sound.
58,
I'm gonna get added
15.
to
Okay, I got that.
Some kind of database probably after this, but that's fine. But I really do think that it'll be great to just see, like, can he do it or can he not do it? With a bunch of nobodies, supposedly, a quote-unquote cast of nobodies. Is he that good of a quarterback? So purely from an NFL perspective, that's exciting for me in a little way. But yeah, I don't know. Fantasy, I'm kind of out on everybody besides who I mentioned.
Jake, do you know what worries me about Rodgers? Which I still think he's going to be fine this year. But
Is it the witchcraft?
Yes, it's the witchcraft.
Okay.
No, it is the fact that we've seen in the past when his wide receivers don't get open, that he hangs onto the ball too long and he's so worried about throwing interceptions that he'll throw it out of bounds. And he'll just throw the ball away. So I'm worried that we're just going to see a ton of balls just get thrown right off the sidelines because his guys are not getting open like Devontae can.
This is the year to go to a Packers game then, by the way, and sit in the first 10 rows to see if you can get a souvenir for sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm looking it up, and the lowest completion percentage for Aaron Rodgers in a season that he started was actually 2019. Yeah, 62% completion percentage.
That was the first year with the new head coach. He didn't know.
I know, but I'm wondering.
He wanted to try and puff up a little bit. Yeah, I think he'll be below
above that this year.
I think he'll be below that, actually.
I think this might be the lowest completion percentage season for Aaron Rodgers, just based on that he has at his disposal.
Yeah, I'm seriously worried about that. I do think Tunyon's going to be a great red zone option this year. He'll probably flirt with double-digit touchdowns again. So I think he's a good late round tight end if you're kind of punting that position. The backfield wheels up both guys, like take them both at cost without hesitation. Like that again, like you said, Jake, the only position I'm truly interested in for fantasy this year.
Yeah, now let's do this though. Let's say that we have to pick one. And because I typically refuse to do this. I'm just not going to have two running backs from the same backfield, even if it was last year's Denver Broncos and with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, even knowing that I was going to get the same production, hypothetically in my head, like assuming that split, I wasn't going to pick one or the other. It's the most limiting to your upside. And it is crazy how literally 50-50 split those two were last year.
That was the craziest backfield like I've ever seen in just the dead even 50-50
in every metric.
Everything, yeah.
Carries inside the 10-yard line, 50-50 split. Carries inside the 5-yard line, 50-50 split. Crazy. Targets over like 50. Everything was a 50-50 split. But so I just won't do that. But if we have to assume at cost, and I want everybody's thought on this one, because I really do think this is one of those moves. If you make the right one, it could absolutely help you with your redraft playoff potential, if nothing else. So Aaron Jones is going as RB13 right now, which I think is low in full PPR formats. AJ Dillon is RB25. Which of those do you want at cost if you have to pick one, Dustin? Who would you go for there?
Aaron Jones. I mean, I love AJ Dillon. I know he's got soft hands. I've seen it happen. I know he can catch the ball, but Aaron Jones is going to be the back that Rodgers really targets.
Yeah, he does lotion up those hands quite a bit in the offseason. I've seen it. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yes, he does. You've seen him lotion up his hands. That's interesting.
I've seen that. Now I need to see Aaron stretch. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Aaron Jones or DeAndre Swift, which one has a higher floor?
Aaron Jones. Sorry, I was biting my tongue hearing the whole DeAndre Swift thing. I just don't think DeAndre Swift's actually a good rusher. I really don't think he's that good. And a lot of it could just be the situation from last year. That was my perspective. I was like, man, he should be more efficient than he is. He's amazing as a pass catcher. My worry is that there's so much competition there for targets now with DeAndre Swift that you might have to sacrifice some of what he's really amazing at to get some of what he's not so good at, which is maybe the pure rushing aspect. Whereas with Aaron Jones, they could be putting both of them on the field at the same time. As you mentioned there, John, earlier, splitting out Aaron Jones wide a little bit. He's just should be a target hog there, is my assumption at least.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like earlier when I was saying the DeAndre Swift, that I agree with Evan for him being a dark horse candidate for RB1 overall. I think Aaron Jones has a better case for it than DeAndre Swift does, because Aaron Jones, in my opinion, has been one of the most undervalued running backs in the NFL over the last 4 years. Like he's just a beast, and his numbers actually just on runs up the middle, which people don't like to think that Aaron Jones, for whatever reason, is a strong, powerful running back. And it's like, have you actually
a slight man?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, have you watched him? No, like he's a beast up the middle as well. Like, don't pigeonhole him into just being a pass catching running back. This dude can run.
He's a good goal line back.
He's a great goal line back. And I wonder if with Luke Getsy not there anymore in Green Bay, I actually wonder if Aaron Jones has more of a dominant role in the offense than AJ Dillon. Like that it's more tilted to like a 70-30, touch total percentage this year, as opposed to how everyone wants to talk about it being this elite 1-2 punch where AJ Dillon's going to have his own. Going from AJ Dillon to Aaron Jones in my head, those names back and forth is very difficult. By the way, I get tripped.
It's AJ to AJ.
It's AJ to AJ.
And that's its own issue,
yes,
for sure. But it sounds to me like then you're pretty much all in on Aaron Jones then at cost as well, above AJ Dillon. With
a low end RB1. He's being drafted, in my opinion, at his floor. I think that where he's being drafted is absolutely the minimum, barring health, of what you're going to see out of Aaron Jones this year. And I think that him finishing as a top 3 back should be more widely discussed as a likely outcome for his season, especially with no Devontae Adams there in the offense anymore. I think that Aaron Jones is arguably one of the best values amongst the top 12 drafted running backs this year.
That's fair. That is fair. Evan, do you feel that AJ Dillon's getting any disrespect here? Would you rather wait and go with AJ Dillon there, or would you take Aaron Jones as well?
Evan went to bed. He's no longer with us.
I probably prefer. Yeah, I probably prefer AJ Dillon. I think both were top 5 PFF graded running backs last year. They're both incredible. So I think I agree. I personally think, especially in Dynasty, Aaron Jones is a great buy if you're a contender, because I agree that he should, in all likelihood, finish as a top 8, top 10, back easily in any sort of PPR format. I think that I would love. I mean, I do think he's being drafted a little bit low, but at the same time, like RB 25 seems very low for somebody who, I think, wasn't he RB 23 or 22 last year. So you're kind of drafting him at his floor as well. And so you could be really stacking up some amazing wide receivers and then grab, Dillon as your second or third running back and have access to that potentially still very high powered offense. I still think, Aaron Rodgers, much as I love to hate on the Packers, like Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in our lifetimes. And he has a way of just elevating those around him, and he just finds a way. The defense, basically the defense could be the best defense in the NFL this year, quite easily could be. They have like the 32nd pace of play. They're very slow and methodical with the way they do things anyways. I think they want to just strangle teams with their defense and just slowly, methodically march the ball down the field. I think they could be a little bit more run heavy, especially later into the season. Those quads just take over. So yeah, I mean, I think I like both. I think for the sake of radio, I'll go with AJ Dillon just to give a bit of argument there and a bit of counterpoint, just so it's not completely unanimous. But yeah, I'll build a bunch of wide receivers. I'll go 0 RB. I'll take AJ Dillon and hope for the upside of a late season, just absolute quad attack.
Thank you for bringing the quads into play there. I seriously think there's no wrong answer here. And I know that's a very Homer thing to say, but guess what? On this episode, I'm going to say it because that's exactly what it was built for. I have a lot of both in all of my best ball drafts to this point. I have a ton of AJ Dillon. I have a ton of Aaron Jones. I'm comfortable with both. I really think that either one could be just an insane lottery ticket at their cost right now. And I don't even feel like it's a Homer thing to say, but I'll just dub it that so people feel comfortable. Yeah.
As fans of other NFC North teams, you have both of us agreeing with you. It's not a Homer comment to say that they're both values at their current ADP. By the way,
so what you're saying is you're Packer fans now.
No, fuck you. No.
A bridge too far, Dustin. A bridge too far.
Too far. You pushed your luck. I'm just disappointed that when I tried to nickname AJ Dillon as Thick Freakness, it didn't catch on. I'm really disappointed about that.
Not everybody has the hipster credentials that you do and understands the reference, Sean. I'm sorry. That's just not.
I was just really disappointed because that was the year that with red shirts, RIP, that we had our big NFL Network celebrity podathon where we had a whole bunch of people on for 6 straight hours on a Saturday after the NFL draft. And we had Marcus Grant, Adam Rank, and Cynthia Freeland, and just so many other people that stopped by. And I asked every single person on there if he should go by the sauce or Thick Freakness. And it was 50-50 split at the end of it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm trying to make this a thing and no one's helping me. And I hate you guys now. So thank you. It's very, Very disappointing.
Fair enough.
I tried so hard to make it a thing, and it just wasn't. It was like Gretchen with fetch. Just
maybe after this year, you get your wish. Maybe it could happen.
He's got his own nickname in his Twitter name, AJ the Sauce Dillon. Like,
well, look, I mean, I know it's uncouth to give yourself a nickname, but I'm not going to tell him that because he's AJ Dillon and I'm me. I'm this fucking skinny guy, so I'm not going to do that. I don't want the wrath of that mascot who got tackled by him this past week. I don't want that. So, Dustin, I think we hit it all, man. I think we covered the shit out of this. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I feel good about this. This is some good conversation. Before we get out of here, I'll have our guests plug whatever they want, where they can find you, and anything you want to say here. It's your time. So, Evan, let's start with you.
I just enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you to Jon for not, losing his shiz and killing me for calling his team great things on when he was so angry at them. Thank you to Jake and Dustin for having me on. It's been a pleasure. But yeah, I mean, just you can catch me on Twitter if you want at FFEvolution. A lot of GIFs thrown around, a lot of silly videos. Most of my semi-serious stuff is on my podcast, Dynasty Debates and Rankings and Writing and stuff over at Dynasty Nerds. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thank you very much, fellas. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Evan.
Jinx.
Oh,
damn it. I think I said it first, but Jon.
A Packers jersey.
All right, Jon.
Give him yours, Dustin.
Oh,
right now. Take it off.
This is my boy right here. No, it's not happening.
No.
All right.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah. Again, it's always wonderful to catch up with you hooligans. Been a blast to be here and talk about this division and the inevitable heartbreak that I'm going to suffer over the next 6 months. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to all of it. Congratulations to the other 3 people here for having teams that might actually make some noise this year. I will not. I am Jon Helmkamp. I am on Twitter at Jon Helmkamp. I cover wide variety of sports, not just football, with the New York Post. So if you're just looking for football content, don't go read that. If you want a wide variety of everything from, mostly from a sports betting perspective, then feel free to find my work over at the New York Post. That's kind of all I got right now. I will actually plug one more thing. Me and my wife, who just got married 7 weeks ago, we both met because we were authors. And we thoroughly enjoy writing, and that's how we started talking, is because we were both going through the process of writing our first novels. Now that kind of the chaos of the wedding is behind us, we're both getting back into that process, and we're both writing sequels to our novels, and we started a brand to house both of our writings and kind of just build that up as this husband and wife writing team. So that on Twitter is at Hearts Path Pub. For publications. So if you guys want to kind of check out that in terms of if you enjoy reading, she writes romance novels. I write contemporary adventure novels. If you guys want to follow along with that, I'd love to have you there as well and talk something other than just football. Holy shit. One of my dogs upstairs just lost their mind. That was exciting. God.
Hey, Jon, maybe after this season, she can write a romance novel about you falling back in love with the Bears. Maybe.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Maybe. There's going to be plenty of turmoil and heartbreak in that novel, though. So there might be a silver lining at the end of it. Rife with pain, but it'll be good. So yeah, guys, looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun season this year, and excited to get our ass kicked by all of your teams. It'll be great.
All right. Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you to both of you for coming on the show. Always lovely having you on. You can find my co-host at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter, doing all of his fun stuff he does out there. Go check him out if you haven't. And if you haven't, why haven't you? You've been living under a rock, I swear to God.
For real.
For reals. You can find our podcast at Drinking Fantasy. You can find me at FF Dusty Dog. As Jake said at the top of the show, hit us with your drunk trades. We'd love to hear them. We'd love to analyze them. And hey, we'll give you a shout out on Twitter too. if you do provide us with those. So hit us with that, and then go rate and review wherever you find this podcast. Give us 5 stars, all that good stuff. It helps others find us better, which is what we want. So until next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.